Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my channel once again, Crime Uncovered by Silke Kaiser. So for those of you that know me, and quite a few of you do, I think, you will know that I have had the enormous honor of working on farm attacks. The farm attacks did not just come my way. I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time to meet the right person that got me involved in farm attacks. I want to say again that all farm attacks are inside jobs, but that not every single employee would be involved in those farm attacks. Most people are good people. They would never dream of becoming involved in crime or murder or rape or harming somebody. And the farm attacks, so when I get to a farm, it's hardly ever that I get to a farm where the attack has happened. I normally get there while it's still in the planning stages based on the information that the informants have given. So without any further ado, I'm going to read this chapter. It's chapter 8. It's a short chapter. I'm going to read the entire thing. I called this chapter, I Am Given a Remarkable Key. When I had been conducting polygraphs for about 3 years, I had built up quite a case history, having tested issues from theft to arson, one murder case, that was hectic, whether a tenant had kicked a dog that belonged to the landlord, guilty, sexual harassment cases, and even a case of whether someone's daughter had used her mother's very expensive eye cream, also guilty. I found that my chosen field of work nourished my soul. I realized I was a natural at reading people, at questioning them, and boring my way to the heart of the matter. I was also obtaining confessions on what would be considered a regular basis. It was clear to me that I was born to work in the field of crime, and I felt deeply contented and satisfied. On days that I had no polygraphs booked, I continued to market my business, even though the word business is a tad presumptuous, since I worked alone and had no partners or colleagues. On this day, I had called a well-known construction company and set up an appointment with a security manager for that very afternoon. With the presentation safely placed into the boot of my car, I drove to the office, which was an hour away. In fact, I was about 2 minutes late. As I waited at reception, I could not have known that a man by the name of Lucas Swart was in the same building as me, and that this man would have a life-changing influence upon me. I also could not have known that he would give me a key to unlock a wondrous door, and that on the other side of that door that lay the map of how crime is orchestrated in South Africa. This map would lead me to walk under the blue skies of this continent as I worked, my feet treading the red ancient soul of African farms that had seen rain and drought, intermingled now with blood and tears of torture and murder and grief, and how I would be brought face to face with God and evil and miracles all at the same time. But that was still minutes away. Mr. Skuman, the security manager, walked into reception, and as I stood up, he remarked on how tall I was. I laughingly explained I was 5'7", but the high-heeled shoes that I was wearing probably made me closer to 8 foot. He remarked in that case my head would probably be scraping the ceiling. We sat in his office, and I briefly explained my profession to him. He became noticeably excited and asked if I wouldn't mind addressing a few of his colleagues. Of course I agreed. And within minutes, I was asked to follow him to the boardroom. There were about 14 people seated in that room, and I realized that this had turned into a public speaking engagement. I would not allow my nerves to get in the way of what I needed to do. I completely ignored the butterflies in my stomach and stood before these people and began speaking about the detection of deception and how my system worked. I could feel the interest of the audience, as the ringing of cell phones was not acknowledged and all eyes were upon me. Once I had finished speaking, a few questions were asked, which I easily answered. Cliff had trained me well. Once done, the audience applauded in appreciation, which somewhat embarrassed me. One man, the proverbial key holder I mentioned earlier, stayed behind to speak to me. At first, Lucas Swart and I made small talk by discussing horses and in particular Arabs. I was riding at that stage, but could not boast about my prowess on the equestrian field because I continuously fell off in lessons and once fell off 3 times in one lesson. As that conversation petered out, Lucas asked me what I knew about farm attacks. I told him I knew it was a scourge in South Africa. He asked me if I knew how they were planned. My eyes widening in excitement, I said I did not have a clue. He began to explain it to me. He told me that no farm attack ever occurred without inside information given by at least one employee to a hit squad. I asked him to explain what that term meant. A hit squad, he said, are the people who come into the farmhouse to commit the attack. He then went on to say that over the years, he had privately investigated the farm attacks. He had built up a nationwide network of Mpimpis informants who regularly gave him information about planned attacks or attacks which had already been successfully carried out. He also got information about farm attacks that had failed. A failed farm attack is defined this way because it was not successfully executed and something would have occurred to spook that hit squad. He told me that each farm attack is meticulously planned, often months prior to the attack happening. From the moment an attack is planned, there is a watcher. This is someone who hides in the vegetation close to the farm and watches the movements of the residents and the workers on the farm. In the years to come, I would term this person the watcher in the woods. The watchers were interchangeable as the farm was watched 24 hours a day. The employee who cooperates with the hit squad is known as the contact person. And if this person does not give the correct information to the hit squad, then that person puts himself or herself into great danger. Lucas had found a way to ensure that the information received from the Mpimpis/informants was accurate, and he paid handsomely for such information. I remained enthralled as this quietly spoken, slightly bald, grey-haired man talked. His incredibly blue eyes did not leave my face at all. As Lucas explained, the safety and the security of the hit squad were always paramount to them, and the main requirement was that they knew exactly what awaited them as they entered a dwelling. Lucas repeated that on all farms, attacks occur because of inside information. The main motivation was either an issue with wages or the workers being interrupted during their lunch or tea times, and the goal was robbery. Sometimes the goal is also racism, and I've heard of some attacks where it is a gang initiation. So there are various motivating factors. The key to this knowledge lay heavy in my hand. Lucas asked me if I would be willing to travel to farms to polygraph farm workers in order to ascertain their involvement. Of course I said yes. I did not know it at the time, but I had stepped through a door that would show me the kindness of humanity as well as the evil of humanity. That's all for now. More tomorrow, where I actually talk about a farm attack. Good night for now.